Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Game Develop Repeat, the podcast where we talk about a game that I enjoy, what makes it special, and what we as game developers can learn from it. I'm your host, Chris, a music educator turned indie game developer, and today's episode is all about Diablo 2. In this episode, we discuss level scaling, efficiency as a gameplay mechanic, discovery-based crafting, a tiny bit about ethics in game design, and we also dig into the feedback I got on my first ever game demo. Quick note, you may notice my voice is a little off in this episode. I'm a little congested. I've got allergies kicking in. I think it's something about coming back home after vacation. It's a whole weird thing. The vacation was wonderful, by the way. Really enjoyed having some time away and spending time in nature. Anyway, let's get into the episode. Chances are you are already aware of Diablo 2. Having said that, I am going to give you the very quick rundown of what it is. It is a top-down, isometric, kill all the enemies and pick up loot from them game. Other games in the genre, Torchlight, Path of Exile, all of the other Diablo games that you are probably familiar with. The original Diablo had more like rogue elements in it. It had more things in common with the roguelike genre than you might think looking at the current Diablo games. It had a tile-based movement system, and it was semi-turn-based. It's really interesting to go back and look at Diablo 1 and see where the series has gone from there, because there's a few features that have completely disappeared that were actually pretty cool but don't really work in the new stuff, and the whole game design philosophy has changed dramatically, and yet it's still hung on to a few of the core ideas and aesthetic principles. Okay, so we're not talking about Diablo 1 today. Sorry, we're talking about Diablo 2. If you played this game, you probably remember hunting for some item obsessively. You probably remember just going over and over and over and running Mephisto and just killing Mephisto a million times to try to get higher quality gear so you can trade it for some item that you're looking for. I was always looking for the Talrash's set. I think it was a magic find set. I think that's why I was obsessed with it. I was trying to get even better at finding more magical gear so that I could sell it and whatever. I don't know why, but Diablo 2 is a game where I got really obsessed with getting valuable items. It became kind of like a weird business simulator for me. I just wanted to acquire wealth in the game. Even with that, I never did. I never really got anything particularly valuable. I remember looking for a Stone of Jordan, which was basically the currency in that game, but it was a very hard to find high-end currency. I never did find that either. The game was heavily hacked. The game was known for scammers and known for being hacked and known for all of these little problems as far as security goes. But remarkably, it was actually better than Diablo 1. Diablo 1 had duplicating items just built in as a glitch in the game. So one of the popular scams in Diablo 2 was to say that you knew a way to duplicate items because people thought you could because of the previous game. And then you would just steal their item off of the ground rather than teach them how to duplicate it. It was a whole thing. There were a lot of scams. Okay, let's get into some of the gameplay mechanics here. I think part of what makes this game so appealing, is the feeling that you are kind of breaking the game as you go. This seems to be a theme with me. I like this feeling that you are getting so good at a game that you're beating it faster than intended or doing something that you're not even supposed to be doing, right? There were builds like the sorceress. There were builds with the sorceress where you could just teleport through the map. Like you could just zoom straight through everything, get to the boss, kill the boss, get gear off of it, and then just reset, go again, over and over and over. You could just rip through it incredibly fast. So it's sort of this like this feeling of how fast can I get being a core gameplay mechanic. How efficient can you get in conquering these enemies and working your way through these levels and grinding for more gear? And that is still something in this genre to this day. Path of Exile involves quite a bit of like efficiency and farming and how fast is your build, how quickly can you clear. Also that you can get to the rare items faster and you can optimize your build. This is an interesting thing about these games. They have a lot in common with almost like management games or like idle games. There's so much going on in these games that is optimization. There's so much going on in this genre that is like, how much can I improve, not necessarily like the way my character plays or my own skills playing the character. How much can I improve the raw stats? And in that way, there is this strange similarity between one of these games and just like an idle clicker game. Like the commonalities between Diablo 2 and Cookie Clicker are disturbing, if a little difficult to see at first. But I bet if you've dug deep on both those games, you kind of see what I'm talking about, right? Like they're both this weird numbers game. But there is something about Diablo 2 that makes this feeling of making progress, of building a stronger character, particularly enjoyable. And it's a delicate balance that I think is very hard to capture. I think it has a lot to do with how the game is balanced and the feeling of consequences. One of the things that this is probably my most controversial opinion about Diablo 2. I prefer the system in Diablo 2 where you cannot change your build. Like once you lock in your build, it's pretty set. I think there are things you can do, but like it's very hard to reset your character. And I like that system. I like those consequences. I like having to deal with that fact. In Diablo 3, one of the things that there are some great things about Diablo 3, but one of the things that didn't quite appeal to me was the character building, because I felt like there were no consequences. I felt like I could just change anything at any moment, so I didn't really have to put a lot of thought into how I built my character to begin with. Whereas in Diablo 2, I had to put a lot of thought into how I built my character, and I had to rebuild the character multiple times. And maybe that worked for me better because at the time I was a kid and I could just burn all the hours of the day away into the game. I do appreciate, for sure, the fact that a lot of these games in the genre give you a way to respec now that is not completely insane, right? But there is generally a cost to it. Diablo 3 didn't really have a cost to it. From what I understand, Diablo 4 does have a cost to it. Now, I did play the demo for Diablo 4. I don't know enough about the game to really make any judgments on it, because I only played the like beta demo, and I've not sunk my teeth into the full game. It is not at the top of my list at the moment. I'm playing things like Tears of the Kingdom. I still haven't finished Dredge, which I really want to finish. And then I'm not okay, this is a little disappointing. I want to play the new Final Fantasy game, but I don't have a console to play it on, so I'm probably waiting for the PC release. So as much as I am invested in that series, basically I'm just going to listen to what other people say about it, find out whether or not it's like close to the level that I'm hoping that it hits, and then I'll just wait forever to buy it. Which is a little bit, too bad. Oh well. For those of you who are playing Diablo 4, I mean, I've heard decent things about it so far. I've heard that there's a lot of good going with it. And when I played the demo, I did enjoy it. I have a couple concerns about like scaling and that sort of thing. I'm interested to see how that pans out in the long term. I think there's a lot of stuff with that game that is like how long term sustainable is the gameplay, and that is one of those weird things in this genre. It's like if you don't get 200 hours of gameplay in this game, then we're like, oh, it's not that good, and that's not actually true. And I think the only reason that mindset exists is because the fans of the genre all grew up with Diablo 2 and played it for like 400 plus hours and still kept thinking there were more secrets to find. Um, which is cool, but it can't be the bar, you know? Like that can't be the minimum standard. That game was just a legend. It did things that nobody else was doing at the time. And yet somehow a lot of these games hold up to that. But it is a lot of this pseudo gambling loot table kind of game design. Like it has a lot to do with random number generation and like hoping that you get exactly the right stats on your items. It's cool though. I this is one where okay, every once in a while I start thinking about ethics in game design. Not every once in a while. I think about it a lot, but Diablo 2 is this game that kind of touches the border for me on gambling ethics. Like it makes me start thinking about it. It makes me go like, where is the line here, right? Because I think something like World of Warcraft does cross a couple ethical boundaries for me, and everybody's going to have their own placement for those boundaries. But for me, World of Warcraft has this thing where it encourages you to play longer, and the longer you're playing, the more you're paying, right? Like the longer you're playing, the longer you're paying for the game. So having the loot tables have these really, really low drop percentages and having the items you want be things that you have to grind for like over a month or whatever. I never got very far in World of Warcraft for the record, so like the over a month thing might be wildly inaccurate, but this is what I've heard. Um, that seems a little unethical. But Diablo 2, you're not paying for it month to month. So the only real issue is like whether or not you're hooked on it and like is the strength of that hook so strong that we're worried about it in that sort of a way? I don't really think so. It's interesting. And then I ask myself like is this good? Like is this fun? Is this compelling game design or is it well, it's definitely compelling, but is it enjoyable or is it just compelling? And is something being compelling enjoyable in and of itself? Like if we feel compelled to keep playing a game, does that mean we're having a good time or does it just mean we like kind of think we are? If we think we are, then is it still a fun game? Does that make sense? I have weird thoughts about that. Like if you feel compelled to play a game, I don't think it necessarily means it's a good game. I think it's just like sometimes we play games that are, I think the food term for it is moreish, which is like this thing they do in food where they perfectly balance the salt, the sweet, and the fat content to make you want to eat more of it, even if you don't like the taste necessarily. There's a balance of flavors that makes you want to keep shoving chips in your mouth, whether or not they taste good. Like you may have noticed this with some foods, like if you really pay attention to how they taste, sometimes they like burn. Like if you pay attention to like really cheap chocolate, you want to keep eating it, but if you eat it slowly and pay attention to it, it's like this doesn't taste great. It kind of burns my tongue. Like it's kind of got a weird flavor going on. And same thing with like certain chips and stuff. I think there are games that are like this, where like you start playing it and you just want to keep going, but that doesn't mean that it's fun. And I realized I just went on this tangent. I think Diablo 2 is fun. I think Diablo 2 is, at its core, a really good game. And I think it is extremely fun. And I think that comes down to a lot of the design choices. I think it comes down to a lot of the visuals, the storyline. I think the combat is great. And I think the loot system gives you it kind of adds on top of all this system by making you want to stay in the world for longer. That being said, if somebody made an argument against that, if somebody was like, no, it's not fun, it's this, it's the loot system is tricking you into, I could acknowledge a portion of that argument. But I do think that if we disregard the loot system entirely, if we ignore the loot system and just say, is this game fun if you weren't playing it for 300, 400, 500 hours? Would this game be fun to just do a full playthrough of? I would say yes. I think that at its core, it is a good game. And then it happens to have some mechanics that keep you coming back for more over and over and over and over and over. Um, and I really appreciate that. And I think there's a couple things in the balance of this game that are really, really fine tuned. And I'm not sure how easy it is to capture that fine tuning again. Oh, other things that I just want to just slam out real quick before we switch to the next section. There's a cool crafting system. We didn't even talk about the Herodric Cube, where you do like all this experimentation, and you combine things together to make better items or to make like ammo or to make all these cool things. It's really nice, and it's kind of discovery focused, which is beautiful, and I love it, and I think it's one of the strengths of the game. And there's also the rune system in the expansion. The runes that you can socket into an item, so they give you certain powers, and then when you put them in a certain order, they create rune words, I think they're called. They create special items that are sort of like unique or rare items that have all these special attributes where the runes combine together to be better than the sum of their parts, right? Or the sum is better than the individual parts, I guess. Those are really cool, and it's again sort of discovery based. I mean, everybody ended up just going online, but the core principle of it being discovery based is great. It's kind of like early Minecraft where you were like, what, how do I make a pickaxe? And you just kind of like made the shape of a pickaxe, and you're like, oh, cool, it made one, right? That's how I feel about the crafting system in Diablo 2. You could also make some wild builds. My brother had a necromancer build that just was useless until a certain level and then suddenly became insanely powerful because there was so much synergy in the build tree, where different abilities make other abilities more powerful, that once he hit a certain level, he was like invincible and barely using any mana. But until that point, he was really weak. Actually, maybe he used a ton of mana even then, but it didn't matter because you can just chug mana potions like your life depends on it. Like you can just live on mana potions. And that is something that I think the future games did improve on dramatically, is that whole mana potion thing. I think the big takeaway on Diablo 2 for me is like, one, the balance of the power fantasy and the balance of like the loot and the grinding and the design of this whole thing. It feels like it's been very carefully tweaked to be in just the right place, to be like fun, not too easy, not too hard, not too frustrating. Like it's a good even level there. And it feels like you can kind of break your build to do ridiculous things that the designers didn't think of. Now they may have thought of them, but the fact that you can, in fact, they probably did, but the fact that you can break the ever living crap out of any particular character and have them just start doing wild stuff and like jumping around the map instantaneously, or like all of this stuff, it feels like you can break the game even though you can't. And I really appreciate that. Having said all that, let's move on to the development section of the podcast. We're going to talk about how we can apply these lessons to our own games, and I'm going to dig into the feedback I got on the demo that I put out. Let's transition over to that. One of the big takeaways from this game for me is how to balance level scaling and how to give the player a feeling of gaining power throughout the game. I'm not a huge fan of the sort of level scaling where everything stays powerful the whole game. I want to be able to go back to an early zone and just ravage things, right? Like early Diablo 2, it takes like a couple shots to kill a fallen. And then late Diablo 2, you click one button and the entire screen full of Fallen is clear, right? I like that progression. I'm a sucker for that. I like that build of power. And I think in like a platformer, we've got a similar idea in like a Metroidvania where you're getting more and more powerful, or you're gaining more and more interesting abilities, and you're getting this sense of like, oh, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting better at navigating this, and I'm clearing through the enemies quicker. I know that level scaling is a thing. I'm not sure why. Like I don't it doesn't appeal to me, and I'm sure there's like good reasons for it, but it's not the way that I want to design my stuff. I like this feeling of like power increase. I understand this idea of keeping every zone playable, and like maybe people want to go back and still fight stuff in the previous zone. Maybe you keep an option for that, right? Or maybe you have a bonus mode where it's just like, nightmare mode or hell mode in Diablo 2. I love that. I love having that option, but constant level scaling doesn't quite work for me. That is one of my reservations with Diablo 4 is I understand that it has a lot more level scaling going on, and I'm not sure that that's going to appeal to me because when I played the demo, I was just like the tiniest bit frustrated with that, but also maybe it'll be good. Like maybe I just haven't opened myself up to it enough yet. Regardless, I've got other games to play at the moment, so I will just put that one on hold for now. Also, it's $70. I'm not a big spend $70 kind of guy. I'm more of a wait for 2 years and buy it at 30 kind of a guy, you know? Not that that is necessarily going to happen, but good lord, $70 is a lot of money for me right now. Like I'm not trying to drop that unless I have to. Um let's get into some more stuff that we've learned from this game, or that I've learned from this game. Um, this feeling that you get of being able to break the game. I love it. I think that is one of the strengths of this game. I think it is one of the things that isn't quite there in other titles. I think Path of Exile did a decent job of it for a while. I don't know how they are with it now. I imagine it's probably still pretty good. But this feeling that if you set up the right build, you can just tear through everything. But you got to think through it. You got to be a little clever. You got to get a little tricky with it. You got to kind of manipulate the stacks, or the stats, excuse me. You kind of got to get weird with it. But then before you know it, you're teleporting across the entire map in like 10 seconds flat, right? I like it. I'm a fan of that capability. I'm a fan of this thing where it's like, oh, there's this boss and it's supposed to take me this long, but I can just one hit kill it because I did this elaborate build that took me like 50 to 100 hours to set up and plan and all this stuff. I like it. Now, there are obviously multiplayer issues with this and like problems that you run into and so on and so on. But, if we ignore that, or if it's like a single player mode thing, then I really enjoy it. I think that's one of the reasons why I like the Elder Scrolls games. In those games, it's like almost impossible to not become broken. Um, like I think the core gameplay loop of like a Morrowind or a Skyrim or Oblivion is become so unbelievably broken no matter what you do. Like you just become crazy powerful. And that is, I would like to have to put a little more thought into it if we're being honest, but I think that's part of the appeal of those games is this like build from weak to really crazy powerful. And then the last takeaway lesson for me from this game is about permanence versus flexibility, specifically in player builds. I am a big fan of permanence in a build. I like, or at least consequence, maybe not permanence, but consequence. I like having to remake the build. Um, not anymore though. Is this just a memory thing? Let me put it this way: I used to like having to reset the build, having to restart, having to try a new thing. I used to like being mildly punished for my build mistakes and then going, "Oh, I got to redo this." These days, I think what I really like is having a feeling of commitment and consequence for my decisions. I don't like being able to just try out anything and everything for the entire game. I don't want to see somebody else's build and go, "Oh, that's cool," and then just switch to it. instantaneously. I want to see their build and be like, oh man, I want to work towards that, right? This actually reminds me, I'm going to tell the shortest little story. Dungeon Siege 2. My brother and I played it on the LAN. I played like a fire combat kind of dude, and he played like a nature dude. And he reached a point in the game where the nature one had an ability that allowed him to use combat spells at the same level as the nature spells. All right, fair enough. Kind of broken, but okay. It turned out this gave him level ups in the combat spells for the amount of experience of the spell he was casting. So if he, this is a huge oversight. So he would be level 1, but get the amount of experience that he would get from casting a level 50 spell whenever he cast a level 50 spell. So basically what happened is he got this nature spell. I don't know the actual levels, by the way. It's been forever since I played this game. But he got the nature spell. He cast it, and then he started using a couple combat spells and instantly got to my level of spell casting, which as a cooperative game really ruined the vibe for me. But I know he enjoyed it, right? Like that's kind of a fun thing to do. But that I think is a case of it being a little too broken. But it was something where I went, oh wow, his build is in the long run better than mine, and man, I wish I had picked nature because good lord. I don't remember the official names of the spell types in that game. Sorry. Dungeon Siege 2 though, really good game. There are a bunch of other games in the series later on that I haven't really clicked with. I think I played 3 a little bit, but actually I might have just been talking about Dungeon Siege 1 now that I'm thinking about it. That might have been the original Dungeon Siege. I'm not 100% sure. I may have to look into that at some point. Those are good games though. Take a look into those at some point. There's some good stuff in that series, and they're kind of Diablo adjacent as well. They're kind of like, I kind of look at them as in between Diablo stuff and like a Baldur's Gate thing. I mean, they lean towards Diablo more for sure. Okay, that's everything about this game. Let's talk feedback from my demo. The first thing to note is that I am immensely grateful for the amount of feedback that I received. I did manage to get feedback from several people who I know personally, and then, most valuable of all, perhaps, I got feedback from a couple of strangers. I got feedback from 2 different game development Discords that I interact with, just like one person per Discord hit me up. And then I got feedback from several friends, one of whom is deeply involved in game development. And he gave some extremely valuable feedback. He gave some specific stuff. He offered like, oh, you've got this bug happening. This might be the fix for it, and so on and so on. Turned out the fix for it was a Boolean that I had wrong. I just had a Boolean not triggering correctly. But anyway, I got all this feedback, and I actually got to listen. This was incredible. I got to listen to a couple people play it over the phone. They were playing it and I was listening as they were doing it, so I got to hear their reactions. Like being like over the shoulder of somebody playing your game is really enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. Let's talk about the variety of feedback that I got. Some people, I got feedback where it was just, oh hey, it's cool. This seems a little clunky, but I don't know, that could just be me, and that's all I've got to say. And I got feedback that was extremely in detail, super in depth, like, hey, this is exactly what feels a little bit weird. This is not great. This is good. I like this. I don't like this. Highly critical feedback. That was also amazing. And then I noticed themes in the feedback. A couple people were saying, hey, the jumps feel just a little slow. Like the movement feels just a little slow. It's not quite right. Something's off with it. And I had the one guy say, yeah, controls feel a little clunky, but it might just be me. People didn't really like the keyboard mouse mix, which I have an alternative for, but I'm going to change that to make it more obvious. There's little things like that which were really valuable. Oops, I hope that wasn't loud. I just tapped my microphone. We're going to keep going. And then I did get feedback on the art style. People liked the art, but the background was too dark, was a consistent theme. And I immediately went to change that. And this is the biggest thing that has changed already as a result of the feedback I got. I went to fix the background, And my God, did that turn into a process. Everybody was like, oh, the background's just a little too dark. I say everybody. It was just a consistent theme. So really, I just got like the sample size was not large, but the people who said something critical pretty much always mentioned the background being too dark. So with that background, I brightened it up, and then I was like, this looks awful. Like, as soon as I brightened it up, I was like, I hate how this looks. This looks so bad. So then I was like, how can I make this look better? One, the bricks were way too flat, so I had to add like a lighting thing to the bricks. I had to just add a 1 pixel tall lighter shade on the top of every brick, and then that made it look a lot better. And then recently I went, oh wait, I need to add shading to like the bottoms and the sides of the bricks, so I did that. And then I needed to, this was the big one, change the kind of tone of the color and add a lot of detail to these bricks. One of my friends has a background in visual arts, and he was like, hey, you should really be using more earth tones. It would make a lot more sense. And I tried it out, and it was like, wow, he's right. 100% right. So I did that. Basically, I brought all the colors closer to gray. I really pulled a lot of the color out of them, and it worked pretty well. It really gives me the right feeling. And then I added some like greenery in there, like some kind of moss buildup between the cracks and on some of the bricks. And then after that, I did a change. This was recent. This was like yesterday. I did a massive change to all of the platforms that the character's walking on, because after I finished fixing the background, now the foreground no longer works. So I had to change all that completely. And that was another little journey, and I got there. In this process, I learned one of the most valuable things I've ever learned, and that is just a workflow change. I was doing this thing that caused a task that is supposed to take like less than 10 seconds. It was taking like 15 minutes, and I was like, there's got to be a quicker way to do this, but I didn't look it up. I didn't find it. I stumbled into it while watching some pixel art videos, and I am a big proponent of just watching random videos about the stuff you're working on, because man, you can stumble into some good stuff. I was watching, it was like an Adam Eunice video. He's this guy who's making a game, and he has just incredible pixel art stuff. I think his last name is Younis. I might be getting that wrong. I think I'm getting it right though. He has a few things about tile maps and character animation and architecture and all this stuff. And I was watching one about tile maps, and I just saw him working on something. He wasn't even talking about what he was doing necessarily. He was talking about something else. But I saw him save something, and it was immediately implemented into the engine. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. How did you just do that? Every time that I try to implement this into the engine, I have to go through this long, frustrating process. So I figured it out. Basically, and this is actually, once I did it, I was like, oh, well, that's obviously how I should have been doing this the whole time. I just have to save direct to engine and not change the name. So if I save it directly to the assets folder to where the engine expects it, it'll just instantly implement. Instead, what I was doing was I was saving it to a folder with like a incrementing file name, and then dragging it into the engine, and then updating everything in the engine to point to that new file name. And I just needed to leave it pointing at the same file name the whole time, because the way I was doing it was causing all these weird bugs where I had to go into every individual scene and turn off and on all of the tile map renderers, which isn't like horrifically slow, but oh my God, comparatively, it's insane how much time I was wasting. So that was a huge, huge workflow change. I also felt like I had like a level up in art skills when I did the brick thing. As soon as I was like, oh wait, I can just put a light on the top of these bricks and they look 3D. As soon as I did that, I went, oh, I can just highlight the tops of things for lighting, and then they look 3D. And then it's suddenly, I know for anybody who's like an art person, this is like listening to a child be like, have you ever heard of the color blue? It's crazy. But I just discovered the color blue, and it's crazy. It's so cool. Yeah, no, I just discovered that you can just highlight the tops of things and suddenly they're 3D. And then I've like learned about saturation a little bit, and I'm like, oh my god! And I can like hue shift a tiny bit. Like I can hue shift towards blue or hue shift towards red, and that's really exciting. And I recognize that these are like such fundamental art skills that that it's almost embarrassingly simple, but oh my god, I'm so happy with them because art does not come naturally to me. Visual art does not come naturally to me, or at least I don't have a lot of experience with it. And I love it though; it's really fun, and I've been enjoying this immensely. And when I had that little level up, I just started putting little vines everywhere in the cracks of the background, and I was like, oh, this is so cool! I can highlight them, and they look real. They're not just like weird blotches of green. Um, it's it genuinely, and I keep saying level up. It felt like there was like a ding and like an aura appeared around me, and like it felt like a level up in real life. It was beautiful, and I was so happy about it. Last comment about the demo, I was just so happy to share the game. It was so nice to like show it to people and have people play it. Oh, my friend's kid played the game, and now that child is excited for the game. He's like, is it almost done yet? I'm like, oh, this is the best. Right? Like to have a kid looking forward to your game is lovely because it's so like pure, right? For a kid to be interested in the game you're making, because they're not like blowing smoke at you, right? They're just interested. They just want to check it out because it's kind of fun and cool. I'm like, that's a great compliment. That's a lot of fun for me. It feels really good to share it. It feels really nice to have people play it. And like one of my friends was like annoyed at me over the phone while playing it because he was like, "This section is hard. Screw you for making it." I was like, "Yeah, dude." Right. So that feels really good. It is just a joy to share it with other people. Um, yeah, that's that's everything I have to say about the demo. If you actually, that's everything I have to say about my development this past week too. Oh, I've started looking into computer science principles a little bit. I'm going to try to study some computer science stuff so that I have a stronger foundation. And then I'm thinking about learning Unreal after I'm done with this project because it seems more marketable and it seems like it's going to open up options for me, like Unreal and C++. We'll figure that out in the future, but I am definitely considering that. Um, Although I'm really glad I started with Unity because, man, uh, it was pretty overwhelming, and my understanding is that it's the more approachable option. Not overwhelming to a crazy degree, but like anything more intense might have been too much for me at that moment. Okay, I think that's everything I have to say about my development stuff. I'm sure there's more, but that's all I can think of at the moment. So we're just gonna move forward from there. Oh, I went on vacation. I'm back from vacation, and that feels great. It was great to take a vacation. Let's go to this week's tip. So we just talked a lot about Diablo 2, a game that is all about hell. My tip this week is to find your personal heaven, so to speak, to find your sanctuary, to find your place where you are comfortable and relaxed and free, and to know when to go spend some time in that place. While I was on this vacation, I had a moment where I was in a hammock by the side of a river in like this beautiful place, this marvelous landscape. And I was like, oh, hammock. Hammock is my heaven. The best place, and I've already known this. It doesn't even have to be an over the top landscape. It doesn't have to be a perfect place. Like just being in a hammock at the end of exerting myself a lot is my heaven. It it is my moment of peace. It is beautiful. It is so fantastic for me to go on a hike, to exert myself, and then at the top of the hike, set up a hammock and just chill and read and just get cozy in it. I don't know why, but that has such an impact on my mood and my relaxation. There is something magical about laying in a hammock after exerting yourself, for me at least. I'm saying find that place for yourself. And I'm not saying find the place where you're like super, super, super like invested, distracted, like TikTok focused in, zoomed in over and over, new thing, new thing, new thing. I'm saying find that place where you just, every breath is beautiful, if that makes sense. This place of calm where you're just in it and nothing is bothering you. I think if you can find that, then you can find real relaxation, and that will help you refuel. There's a book I recommend to help get into that mindset, because the mindset of that is difficult if it's not something that comes naturally, and boy does it not come naturally to me. I am a stress machine. There's a book called How to Relax by Thich Nhat Hanh. I think I am pronouncing that horribly wrong. It is tiny and it is soothing. It's like a Buddhist thing. It's a nice little book. But yeah, find your place of relaxation so that after weeks of banging your head against a wall and screaming at your code, hopefully not literally, but getting really frustrated with code and whatever else, hopefully you have a place where you can just go, no more of that. Right? That is the thing we all need, especially in programming. Good Lord. Oh, and in art, man, pixel art is so time consuming. Oh my God. And it is a little bit finicky, at least for now. I think as I get better at it, it'll flow better. But that is the tip for this week. And that is everything that I have for this week. I'm happy to be back. It was nice doing another recording session. And I will talk to all of you next week. Until then, have a good time, make some stuff, and have fun with it. I'll see you next time. Bye.